Time period is the Chinchorro, and that actually translates into small boat. We first see them around 9,000 BP, lasting until about 3,800 BP. They did live in the Atacama Desert, so you can kind of see this here in this map, is in modern-day Chile. And here is the actual Chinchorro site down here. So we have some middens that date to about 9,000 BP, but actual habitation seems to be a little bit, maybe like 2,000 years later. But it does provide the earliest evidence for an ancestor cult in this region, so ancestor veneration. So by 8,000 BP, the Chinchorro start to mummify their dead. So these predate the Egyptian mummies. We find hundreds of Chinchorro mummies in the Atacama Desert. They're both sexes, of all ages. We can tell from the burial population that the average lifespan was about 25 years, so not very long. So it's just a really interesting kind of thing here. One thing we can also tell from the burial population is that it's estimated about a quarter of children died before their first birthday. So obviously we have pretty egalitarian status since everybody's being treated pretty much the same. Also from the mummies we can tell that they were using a combination of marine and terrestrial resources for their subsistence. So the process of this particular mummification is a little bit different than the Egyptians. Here the individuals were skinned and then the soft tissue was removed, and then sticks were put into the body to help support the actual stuffing of the body with grasses then. Then the skin is kind of slid back on like a glove. Masks are made and wigs are then put on the individuals. So here you can kind of see the process in this particular graphic. Now try clicking on this picture because I linked it to a short video on the process of the Chinchorro mummies. I don't want to try it here because I'm in the middle of recording, but go ahead and try it from your computer and see if you can actually use that link. Probably not though, but anyways, there we go. So that's the Chinchorro. The other thing we can tell from the mummies is that they had a number of pathologies. So we see a number of protozoans like tapeworms, roundworms, and hookworm. The tapeworm is kind of interesting because we see the same type of anemia in the Chinchorro that we see in sea lions. So it probably had a sea lion type of parasite. Now we're going to move up into the late Archaic, is also referred to as the pre-ceramic period. So we're talking about 5,000 to 4,000 BP. And we start to see large-scale architecture. But what's interesting is that we don't see cities emerge. So first large architecture in the New World is during this pre-ceramic period in South America. So one of the sites that we know quite a bit about is Espero, and this is found on the coast, and at this particular site we found 11 small flat-topped mounds and 6 rather large ones. They're generally kinds of like piles of rock and stone covered. You can kind of see this reconstruction here. Sometimes they're put right up against hills. A lot of times they're using natural hills underneath it. And then again, some have these nice stone facings. This is actually a reconstruction of Huaca de los Sacrificios at the site of Espero. There's also another, I think it's the Huaca de Idalo. But Huaca just simply means sacred place. Let's see if I put that name in there. I did not, so let's go back. So we see that construction actually began around 5,200 BP. It looks like it was completed around 5,000 BP. We find fire pit and the structures at the top. Some people have suggested that they were doing burnt offerings in these fire pits. We do find some burials associated with the actual culture. We see some differentiation, but it's not a lot. We do see some elite burials, but the adults don't have a lot of goods with them. But infants actually do. So we find infants often with a cap that's covered with hundreds of beads, seeds and clay. We find gourd bowls, we find baskets, reed mats, textiles, grinding stones. So are we looking at early status? Are we looking at offerings? Was the infant itself an offering? There's still a lot of questions going on here. El Precio is another site from this pre-ceramic period. We do see some monumental architecture, and quite a bit of it here. At least 100,000 tons of quarried stone were used in the construction of El Paraiso. There are 9 architectural complexes associated with the site. Each is about 3 stories high. We don't find any occupational debris, and few middens are found near the site. So that suggests that the people didn't live here year-round, and maybe it was simply a ceremonial center. We do see some deviation from the flat-top platforms. We do see a U-shaped pattern emerge, and this is something that we see then subsequently throughout all of the Andean cultures. So we believe this represents cosmological principles. You have these opposing forces of the universe. The central building then acts as a unifying force between cosmic domains. So we also believe it was a way to focus sacred energy for the good of all the people. So again, this U-shaped kind of ceremonial style becomes quite prevalent over time. Some people suggest that it's a way to worship mountains and ensure crop fertility, and also that the herds survive. So El Paraiso, and this is where we see the U-shape come up. What's interesting also about these pre-ceramic sites is that agriculture doesn't seem to be the dominant subsistence strategy, which is unusual when we start to see that kind of complexity. We usually see agricultural base with it, as we've seen throughout the quarter. So the question is then, how did this all get built? Well, 2 guys, Michael Mosley and Edward Lanning, have proposed the maritime hypothesis. And they have proposed that the first complex societies in the Andes arose out of a marine economy. And they use the evidence of a large number of shellfish middens. We find the Chinchorro mummies, again with the sea lion parasites. The early domesticated plants that we find at the coast sites are actually not edible plants. They're bottle gourds and cotton. So you can make nets, you can make lines, you can make floats. So again, we're not talking about necessarily food plants, although we do find wild plant remains at sites. It would take a different kind of infrastructure to, I forgot, put a few pictures in here about the evidence, but it would take a different kind of infrastructure to organize that kind of monumental architecture than we've seen from some of the other societies. It would take a lot less coordination and labor because fishermen don't need to coordinate all that much. So it implies that the complex societies in the Andean region arose for different reasons than some of the other places we've looked like. Now, it's likely that the complex societies arose out of an ability to exploit a variety of subsistence resources and social interaction with groups at various altitudes. So again, this is actually a pretty good resource strategy because with the marine food you can get all the protein that you need, and with the plants that are included in the diet you can get all the carbohydrates that you need. One thing I forgot to talk about, but we can do it now because it's also a part of the theories onto why we see complexity emerge here. Some people have suggested that a cargo system was in effect. So why we don't see leaders particularly emerge during this time frame is that people might have had a temporary leadership, so somebody's assigned a task to do, and then when that's done, somebody else is assigned to either take over or to start a new task. So it's kind of a temporary leadership thing, and that's called a cargo system. So rotating leadership, and it's still used in the Andes today. So it's possible that it was there during the pre-ceramic period also.